start. Okay. So, do we have to read it? We have
Yes,
not.
Rangada.
So, one of you has to read. Pallavi, you are the starter of Tuesday class. So, you start reading. Okay. These two changes.
These, these two changes are the signs of a first effectuation in which the activities of the mental nature are lifted up, spiritualized, widened, universalized, liberated, led to a consciousness of their true purpose as an instrumentation of the divine creating and developing its manifestation in the temporal universe. But this cannot be the whole scope of the transformation, for it is not in these limits that the integral seeker can seize from his ascension or confine the widening of his nature. For if it were so, knowledge would still remain a working of the mind, liberated, universalized, spiritualized, but still, as all mind must be, comparatively restricted, relative, imperfect in the very essence of its dynamism. It would reflect luminously great constructions of truth, but not move in the domain where truth is authentic, direct, sovereign, and native. There is an essential still to be made from this height, by which the spiritualized mind will exceed itself and transmute into a supramental power of knowledge. Already in the process of spiritualization, it will have begun to pass out of the brilliant poverty of the human intellect. It will mount successively into the pure, broad reaches of a higher mind, and next into the gleaming belts of a still greater free intelligence, illumined with a light from above. At this point, it will begin to feel more freely, admit with a less mixed response the radiant beginnings of an intuition, not illumined but luminous in itself, true in itself, no longer entirely mental and therefore subjected to the abundant intrusion of error. Here too is not an end, for it must rise beyond into the very domain of that untruncated intuition, the first direct light from the self awareness of essential being, and beyond it attain that from which this light comes. For there is an overmind behind mind, a power more original and dynamic which supports mind, sees it as a diminished radiation from itself, uses it as a transmitting belt of a passage downward, or an instrument for the creations of the ignorance. The last step of the ascension would be the surpassing of overmind itself, or its return into its still greater origin, its conversion into the supramental light of the divine gnosis. For there is in the supramental light, for there in the supramental light is the seat of a divine truth consciousness that has native in it as no other consciousness below it can have the power to organize the works of a truth which is no longer tarnished by the shadow of the cosmic inconscience and ignorance. There to reach and thence to bring down a supramental dynamism that can transform the ignorance is the distant but imperative supreme goal of the integral yoga.
A wonderful paragraph where he is giving you very clearly, he is mapping the whole. Okay. So, to understand this paragraph, keep in mind one basic thing and then we will proceed. Okay. So, what you have to remember is the three levels. Okay. Because here is so clearly given and I'll identify each word and what which level he is talking about. Okay. Because then we have very clear understanding of what he's saying. So, level one, the normal consciousness of man. In level one, there is also the normal consciousness of an animal, but the man has got a mind which is logical. The animal doesn't have a logical mind. But this is logical, it may be, but it is not spiritual. Level one. You are in ignorance and you are seeing only the appearances of things. You are not seeing the divine reality behind all the forms. Number one. Number two, your consciousness rises out of your body, mind, life, goes to level two. Level two, he has given you all the four planes of consciousness. And these level two, he calls spiritual planes of consciousness. Sometimes he uses the word ideal planes of consciousness. Okay, this is level two, where your ignorance largely disappears. You start seeing the reality behind the forms. If you are lucky, this can happen. But also you may feel that the physical world is unreal. If you are there in the spiritual planes of consciousness, two possibilities. One, you are seeing the physical world as unreal and you reject it. And if you are lucky, as I said, sometimes it can happen that you have the experience of the cosmic consciousness. That means you feel yourself to be one with everybody, and in that time you don't reject the physical world. It is real, but it is full of forms only, outward forms. You see the forms and you see the divine presence behind the forms. But even that is not enough for the interior yoga. You have to go to level 3, which is the Superman. And there you have full knowledge and you also have the power to change your lowest, the manifestation. Even the body, mind, life can be changed. At level 2 spiritual planes of consciousness, you can change your mind. It can become full of light. Okay. You may also have a little bit of power and bliss. You can have. It depends on the individual soul, what it wants. But at the third level, the power even to change your body is there. Transform your body. Okay. Not change, but transform. It becomes a divine body. Subject not even to death and illness. Okay. When you are in the spiritual planes of consciousness, remember your body changes can be there. Like Sridhar's body became golden color. Okay. But you are not been able to transform your body into a divine body. You are still subject to death and illness. Okay. That is so clear when all the avatars are all left and right. So many of them have cancer. Okay. Ramakrishna had cancer of the throat, and Raman Maharshi had cancer of the shoulder. Okay. So all these are the third level. So this is what he is talking about here in this paragraph. We'll have a look at these two. But now before that, he is talking of these two changes. So I probably have forgotten what the changes are. So we'll just read the summary of what he has said in the previous paragraph. We'll know the two changes and then we will proceed. Okay. So just 1 second. Yeah. So in the previous para, he is saying the transformation of the seeker's mind of knowledge and works from ignorance to gradually increasing knowledge is seen in two movements. The first movement is a central change of consciousness. When Sri Aurobindo says central change, what he means is the self, the Atman, the Brahman, level 2. Okay. And a growing direct experience, vision and feeling of the divine transcendentally and universally. When you are in the cosmic consciousness, you see the divine transcendently also, but universally also, in itself and in all things. Okay. Then this recognition of the divine presence becomes the first and foremost preoccupation. You are constantly thinking of the divine. It's a deepening, widening and ascending movement. Now look at that. Okay. Each word is deepening. You start understanding even the inconscient, and your body also you start understanding. Sri Aurobindo says, I have understood the secrets of matter. He uses the word in a very humorous tone. He says, I've got my Einsteinian formula. Okay, I'm beginning to understand matter. Deepening, going down, widening horizontally, and ascending movement. Your consciousness goes on expanding in every direction. Okay. But now the central consciousness, which is the Brahman consciousness, level 2, okay, takes up mere mental knowledge and makes it a part of its own field. Okay. Now, this makes it a part of its own field. That means it takes up the mere mental knowledge, level 1. Okay. It is information, it's not knowledge. There is a difference between information and knowledge. Okay. Knowledge is spiritual. Information is scientific. Okay? You know, scientific. All your studies, medical studies are all just information. It's not knowledge. If you use it in the technical sense, the two words, and make it a part of its own field, okay? In annexation, we use the word annexation. It's like Sikkim was annexed by India, okay, when Indira Gandhi was Prime Minister, annexed, okay? Like the Americans annexed the Hawaiian Islands. They made it part of their own country. So this is what you do. The level 1 becomes annexed to the level 2. It becomes part of you. That means you have power over it and you understand even the law. The Brahman consciousness starts to infuse itself into all normal mental movements, spiritualizing, authenticating, and illuminating the surface activities. Okay, the spiritualizing means your consciousness is now in level 2. It's not anymore in level 2. Okay, and it starts illuminating, giving light and understanding rightly level 1. Okay. Now the second sign of the transformation of the mind is a working, it's a practical completion and perfection, so that the divine himself becomes a knower of all fields, including the physical. The Gita sequence of, first of all, you are a Sakshi in the second level. Then you become the Bharta. You realize that, oh, the world is not as unreal. I have been, my consciousness is supporting that. Then you realize that you are the Anumanta. You have permitted your body, mind, life to act according to gather experience. And experience can be positive and negative, good and bad, pleasant and unpleasant. Then you become the Jnata. Knowledge comes in. And then you start even enjoying. You become the Bhokta. Finally, at the third level, you become Ishwar. This is the Gita sequence. Now, mental level, say, now when at level 2, your consciousness has gone up to level 2, the mental labor is reduced. Labor, not the word labor, hard thinking. We have to really think hard at level 1. But level 2, the thinking disappears. The mentalizing, acrobatizing, galley slave labor is replaced by a light that sees easily all that needs to be seen, known and executed. Then the inner knower replaces the ordinary mind of normal man. This is what she said in the previous para. Okay, so with this, so first change, you rise to the hour level. Then from the second level 2, you start percolating your knowledge and all that in level 2. Then you start becoming. But even this is not enough. That's what he's going to tell us in the para that we read today. And I'm starting to read those sentences one by one. These two changes, the two changes, first a central rising to the level 2, then a percolation of knowledge of level 2 into level 1. Okay, your whole life will change. These two changes are the signs of a first effectuation in which the activities of the mental nature are lifted up, spiritualized, widened, universalized, liberated, led to a consciousness of their true purpose as an instrumentation of the divine, creating and developing its manifestation in the temporal universe. We'll look at each word and understand what he is saying. Okay, so the mental nature are lifted up. Your normal mental nature, level 1, ignorance, seeing only the surface of things, that is lifted up to level 2. Okay? And when it is lifted up to level 2, same way using the word spiritualized, because spirituality is level 2. It is not level 3, nor is it level 1. Okay? It is level 2, spiritualized. Your consciousness now in level 2. It becomes wide. In other words, even if you are let us say you are an engineer, you start understanding even knowledge of other things also, literature, okay, and medicine, all these things you will start understanding much more, widening. It's not limited only to one field. Then it is universalized, okay. It becomes wide. Everything that is there in the universe, you start understanding. Liberated. Liberated means you are not subject to the body, mind, life. The desires will not affect you. Your ignorance will not affect you. Your wrong movements may be there in the lower. In level 1, it may still be there. When your consciousness is level 2, the old movements of level 1 continue. Suppose you have a habit of getting angry, you will continue to be angry. But then when you become the Jnata, okay, then you have the power to Anumanta. You have the power to slowly change that. Okay? Liberated. Liberated means that your consciousness is level 2. Led to a consciousness of their true purpose as an instrumentation of the divine, creating and developing its manifestation in the temporal universe. Now, true purpose, body, mind, life is given to you so that they are used as instruments for knowledge. Whatever knowledge we get, even in science, okay, even in the physical world, we need instruments. A doctor needs instruments, an engineer needs instruments to gather knowledge. No? So this is your instrumentation in the spiritual field is body, mind and life. These are the instruments. And who is using the instruments? Your soul. Okay. Of the divine. Now note the word creating. Where does the creation take place? At level 1. Okay. Creating. There is a difference between that which is created is born in time and space and dies in time and space. This is a manifestation. Manifestation also implies that all manifestation is created because there are some things which are not created. Okay, they are not created, but they can evolve. Your soul is not created. The spiritual planes of consciousness they are created but permanent. The universe, the divine, the supermental is not created. It is eternal. It remains always there. Okay? Even in the spiritual planes of consciousness, they are eternal. They are not born. They are not created, not born. Okay? So the word creating is itself so pointing out certain things and enlarges your ideas. Everything that is in the physical world is created. There are non-created realities also. Your soul, the higher planes of consciousness, those are not created. They don't disappear. They are eternal. And developing in manifestation in the temporal universe. Note that. Temporal, subject to time. Universe, subject to space. Okay? But this cannot be the whole scope of the transformation. So, when you are in this second level, huge amount of changes come. Your whole life becomes different. You start seeing the reality of things. But it's not full. Okay? The transformation, whenever Srinivas speaks of transformation, he speaks of the change in the body, mind, life. Okay? Total. That's what he means by transformation. But this cannot be the whole scope of the transformation. So level 2, wonderful, but not enough. Not enough for who? For the integral yoga. It is enough for the others because it is so satisfying, but not enough for the integral yoga. For it is not in these limits. Okay? Even in the spiritual field, level 2, there are limits that the integral seeker can cease from his ascension or confine the widening of his nature. There is a limit, okay? Even in level 2. For if it were so, knowledge would still remain a working of the mind. Okay? So, mind, it may be liberated, universalized, spiritualized, but still, as all mind must be, comparatively restricted, relative, imperfect in the very essence of its dynamism. Now note that, because when you go to the self, there is no dynamism, there is only silence. But your mind, nature of mind is dynamic. That means it is moving all the time. There is movement. Okay, and movement is something, when movement is there in the heart, your emotions are going here, left and right, hate, love, okay, liking, disliking, all these things, you can't see it because there is movement. And if there is movement, you can't see the reality. It actually stops you from seeing. Huh? If you look at my hand in the image, okay, can you see my face? You can't. So all movement restricts knowledge. Okay, so you have to make the movement has to disappear. It has to disappear in the heart by samatha. It has to disappear in the mind by absolute silence, no thoughts at all. Then you see the truth. So movement, that's why in level 2, your mind becomes silent and you start seeing the reality, but even that is not enough to understand. Okay, so dynamism. So I'm pointing out the implications of each word. When I use the word dynamism, it means movement. It would reflect luminously great constructions of truth, but not move in the domain where truth is authentic. Now let's look at this clearly. Level 2, okay, luminously. At level 1, there is no luminosity at all, it's a darkness. Your mind has to struggle. But when you go to the higher mind level, as I told you, I'll repeat that again. When you are in level 1, it is like you are in a dark room, but it is lit by a candle. Okay? So you have to grope and see in corners what you are looking for. Suppose you are looking for, you have lost your keys and you are looking for your key, you'll have to grope. But higher mind, okay, level 2, higher mind, eleven mind, it is like a broad daylight. You don't have to struggle. There's no labor. Okay, you just turn your gaze and you see and you pick it up. That difference is there between level 1 and level 2. Then it can reflect luminously, and note the word reflect. It is not seeing the reality yet, it is reflecting, but luminously. Great constructions of truth. Now note the word construction. We have to be very, very clear. At our level, level 1, all our thoughts are constructions. Okay? It's a, there's a, in the Indian philosophy, they tell you that your mind is a substance. Okay? There is a mental substance. Just like there is a body substance, physical substance, there is a vital substance, and your emotions also take, your vital substance takes forms, okay, and colors. Similarly, your mind also, normally the thought substance is yellow, okay, and it takes forms. So this is a construction. When you are thinking of something, when you are thinking of, say, a mountain, the mental substance takes the form of a mountain. It's a construction, and then it disappears. So in the level 1, absolute construction. Level 2, they are still constructions, but they are luminously reflective of truth, these constructions. But you have to go beyond constructions. You have to see the truth itself. That is where Sridhar is saying authentic truth, okay? But not move in the domain of where truth is authentic. So where is truth authentic? Level 3, okay? Direct, sovereign, and native. Now look at the words, each one, let us see. Direct, what does it mean? Direct means at my level, I am using my senses. It is indirect knowledge. If I don't have my senses, I cannot know the world. Very clear. If I'm blind, deaf, okay, I can't understand the world. So I don't get truth. Okay. But it is indirect knowledge. When I have senses, I am getting the knowledge through my senses. But when I go to level 2, I am not using my senses at all. I am using my subtle senses. Still there is instrumentation, but still it is much better. It is direct. Direct means, now suppose I am talking with any one of you. Let's say I am talking with Sunki, Yasmin, or Tarika, or any of you. I will know your thoughts. You don't need to tell me because I can see directly. Okay, that's what you mean by direct. Okay, and where is it gone? Direct. Then sovereign. Sovereign is, the word sovereign is very interesting. Just see. Who is a sovereign? When it doesn't depend on anybody else. When India was not free, it was not a sovereign power. It depended upon Britain. But now we are a sovereign power. We don't need to depend on anybody except ourselves. So that knowledge does not depend on senses. It depends only on itself. That's what I mean by sovereign. Okay. And native. That means those powers are there at that level. They are not there elsewhere. My native land is where I was born. Okay. So each word, see how interesting it is. Direct, sovereign, native. So they never uses words uselessly. He is always, each one you go behind and you will see what is meaning. Okay. Now, there is an ascension still to be made from this height. Which is this height? Level 2. You have to go to level 3. by which the spiritualized mind, level 2. Okay. I told you the spiritual higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind, and overmind. It is a spiritual mind. Okay. Will exceed itself. It will go beyond into level 3 and transmute into a supramental power of knowledge. Okay. He is talking of knowledge because he is talking of the mental. Okay, so it goes into a supramental power of knowledge. When it goes into supermind, there are other powers also, but power of knowledge is there. Now he is going to describe to us the 4 planes of the spiritual planes of consciousness, and he will give you also the description. Already in the process of spiritualization, it will have begun to pass out of the brilliant poverty of the human intellect. Now, human intellect, level 1, and it's a poverty. The knowledge is there, very poor, but he's using the word brilliant poverty. Swamya loves oxymorons, okay, opposite terms, okay. So why is he saying it's poverty, okay, but brilliant? Because if you see, scientific knowledge is really a poverty. You really know nothing except the appearances of things. But is it not brilliant? Scientific knowledge is brilliant. It has been able to conquer illnesses. It has been able to make bridges over vast rivers. Okay, it has been able to sail and fly in the air. Now it has invented the internet. Okay, so it's absolutely fantastic what it has done at the physical level. So it's a poverty, yet it is brilliant. Okay, so the brilliant poverty is level 1. Okay, so brilliant poverty is in human intellect, very clear, level 1. Okay, it will mount successfully into the, now he is describing the spiritual planes of consciousness, into the pure, broad reaches of a higher mind. So the higher mind is the first plane of consciousness in the spiritual world. Level 2, it begins with the higher mind. This is a technical term. Huh? It's not an adjective. It's a technical term, higher mind. And that higher mind, broad, pure broad reaches, pure. There's no mixture. Okay? And broad. Your knowledge becomes universalized. Okay? Next, into the gleaming belts of a still greater free intelligence, illumined with a light from above, the illumined mind. And what it is telling you is a gleaming belt. Gleaming means there's a light. Okay? And that light, with a light from above, not from below. Okay? In the level 1, you need light from at that level itself. If I don't use a torch, I will not be able to see in the darkness. So I have to use a light of a lesser quality. But in the higher mind, the light is coming from above. You don't need to use any other light. Okay? This is illumined mind. Okay? The light is spiritual light coming and illumining your understanding of things. Now he goes to the next one. At this point, it will begin to feel more freely, admit with a less mixed response. Mixed response because the lower planes, body, mind, life is still affecting partly the knowledge in the level 2. Mixed response, the radiant beginnings of an intuition. And what's the difference between intuition and illumination? Not illumine, but luminous in itself. In other words, in illumined mind, there is a light being thrown on what you want to understand. Then you understand. But in the intuition, the object which you want to see is itself emitting the light. It's not some light thrown from outside. See, that is itself, it will reveal its truth to you. So, at an intuitive level, if I am looking at you, okay, you may be speaking something, but I will know what your condition is. Your own consciousness, I will be able to see. Your own consciousness will reflect itself, and I will be able to understand what you are directly. That's the difference is very clear. Illumined, spiritual light is coming and illuminating your mind. But in the intuition, you don't even need to throw a light from outside. Itself, okay? Very clear, na? Luminous in itself. See, sometimes the language may be a little difficult, but I'm making it very very graphic so that we understand exactly what he's saying. So, true in itself, okay, it is not only luminous in itself, but true in itself. It's a truth. Because what we see at the physical world is not the truth. Remember, we are seeing only the outer forms. They will appear and disappear, appear and disappear. It's not true. Okay? No longer entirely mental and therefore subjected to an abundant intrusion of error. So when you go to the intuitive level, error becomes much less. Okay? Now Srimati is saying, here too is not an end. He describes it as a plateau after plateau, plateau after plateau. Plateau means a flat ground. The level going on. The mountain has got so many levels. So spiritual plane of consciousness, 4 levels. So level 1, higher mind. Level 2, element mind. Level 3, intuitive mind. Now he goes to the overmind. Okay? And see the description. Here too is not an end, for it must rise beyond into the very domain of an untruncated intuition. Untruncated, the divisions start disappearing. Untruncated intuition, the first direct light from the self-awareness of essential being, Sat, okay, and beyond it, it goes beyond it, attain that from which this light comes. So, and that is calling the overmind. For there is an overmind behind mind, a power more original and dynamic which supports mind. Now, the dynamism also starts coming in. Okay, a power more and dynamic which supports mind, sees it as a diminished radiation from itself, uses it as a transmitting belt of passage downward or an instrument for the creations of the ignorance. All the creations are in the ignorance, level 1. There are no creations at the higher levels. Okay? There are no creations. They are only reflections of truth. But at the lower level, there are creations which are born and disappear, born and disappear, or an instrument for the creations of the soul. He is saying that overmind is the level where creation starts. In the supermental, it's a permanent thing, and the essential oneness is there in the supermind. But in the overmind, the division starts. So technically you can use the word ignorance. Ignorance, the beginning of ignorance is there at the overmind level. It is so high, and yet that is where the manifestation starts. Manifestation, creation, the universe, it starts from the overmind level. When you are in the absolute supermind, you are lucky enough to get the transcendent consciousness, the universal consciousness, as well as the individual consciousness. But above that, into the Satchidananda, it is there is no manifestation. Okay, so this is overmind. You see, and he is describing it as a power more original and dynamic, which supports mind with an M cap. That means all the planes below. Sees it as a diminished radiation from itself. Okay? All the planes below the overmind are diminished planes. Okay? It becomes slightly darker. Uses it as a transmitting belt of passage downward or an instrument for the creations of the ignorance. So, very clear. The creation, the universe is created from the overmind level. Okay? In the supermind, there is the triple status of the supermind we have done, if you remember. All the 3 are there, all the powers. The last step of the ascension would be the surpassing of overmind itself, or its return into its own still greater origin, its conversion into the supramental light of the divine gnosis. Now finally, you have gone to level 3 and you are in the supramental. For there in the supramental light is the seat of the divine truth consciousness. Now note that whenever Srimati uses the word truth consciousness with a hyphen, very clearly he is meaning the supermind. I am telling you, next time when you read something and you see the truth consciousness word or divine gnosis, you know that he is talking about level 3. Okay? So that's why I am pointing out. Supramental light, divine gnosis, truth consciousness, that has native in it. Okay? no other consciousness below it can have the power to organize the works of a truth which is no longer tarnished by the shadow of a cosmic inconscience and ignorance. In the supermind, there can be no error. But even in the overmind, because it's a beginning of the division, beginning of the many, there can be a slight distortion of truth can be there. But in the supermind, no distortion at all. Can power to organize the works of a truth, which is no longer tarnished, made dirty, okay, made blemish, okay, can transform the ignorance and ignorance, there to reach and thence to bring down a supramental dynamism that can transform the ignorance is the distant but imperative supreme goal of the integral yoga. So the integral yoga wants to go right up to level 3. It is not satisfied with spiritual liberation of level 2. Okay, so very, very clear. So we have 10 minutes more. So big para, but so descriptive and so interesting. And you have to keep all these things in mind. Nah? So this level 1 ignorance, level 2 spiritual planes of consciousness or the ideal planes, having 4 levels. 4 according to his scheme of things. You can describe in so many other ways. Higher mind, element mind, intuitive mind and over. So higher mind, our normal mind is a candlelit room. The higher mind is a broad daylight. The element mind is like lightning, okay? The huge amount of light comes in. At the intuitive level, the light is not thrown on what you want to know, but the thing, what you want to know itself emits the light. Okay? And overmind is the beginning of creation. Okay? The one starts becoming the many at the overmind level. That's why there are millions and millions of godheads. And that interesting, these godheads are not imaginations and similes and metaphors. They are not. They are real powers. They are individual powers of impersonal forces in the physical world. Okay? There is, for instance, Indra, who represents the mind. Okay? He is a real being. Okay? Then there is Varuna, who represents the whiteness, and the sea. Sea is a symbol of whiteness. So he is the person who represents the whiteness. Then there is Mitra, okay, who is the person who represents love. Okay? So like that, there are so many gods. All these gods are there at the higher level. These are all personal. Parjanya, for instance, is the god of rain. So everything that is impersonal in the physical world has got a personal aspect. Okay, wind is impersonal here, but there is Marut. Okay, he is the person representing this mind. Because as you keep going up, there is a concentration. The many are becoming the one. So there is a one Godhead behind all these forms. Okay, so this is what he's saying. So you have to reach there to the highest level. This is the aim of the integral yoga. If you are not interested, fine, you can be a yogi also, but you don't need to go to the supernal level. But if you are following Sri Aurobido's dictum and his way of looking at things, you have to go right up to the top. That's why he says, my yoga starts where the others end, because the liberation is the end at level 2. Many people are more satisfied with that. But Sri Aurobido wants to go to level 3. Okay? Let's read the next para. We'll have to. So who will read? Any one of you?
I will read.
Okay, go ahead.
There are two sides of the transformation of the seeker's mind of knowledge and works of knowledge, from the process of the ignorance to the process.
Sarika, where are you reading? As the light of each.
Oh, sorry.
Page 148.
Yeah. Sorry. As the light of each of these higher powers is turned upon the human activities of knowledge, any distinction of sacred and profane, human and divine, begins more and more to fade until it is finally abolished as otiose. For whatever is touched and thoroughly penetrated by the divine gnosis is transfigured and becomes a movement of its own light and power, free from the turbidity and limitations of the lower intelligence. It is not a separation of some activities, but a transformation of them all by the change of the informing consciousness that is the way of liberation, an ascent of the sacrifice of knowledge to a greater and ever greater light and force. All the works of mind and intellect must be first heightened and widened, then illumined. Domain of afterwards translated into workings of a greater non-mental intuition, then again transformed into the dynamic outpourings of the overmind radiance, and these transfigured into the full light and sovereignty of the supramental gnosis. It is this that the evolution of consciousness in the world carries prefigured but latent in its seed and in the straining tense intention of its intention of its process. Nor can that process, that evolution, cease till it has evolved the instruments of a perfect in place of its now imperfect manifestation of the spirit.
Yeah. So we have only 4 minutes left, and here also we will not be able to look at the whole thing. So I'll just read out to you the paragraph, the summary of the paragraph that we just now read. Okay. Then, if you have any question, we can deal with those questions. But next time we'll redo this paragraph. Okay. So, what's he saying? He's saying each of the ascending planes bring their lights, their powers into human activity by an increasing knowledge. By the way, he's going on stressing knowledge because the chapter is the ascent of the sacrifice, and he is dealing in this chapter with only the knowledge aspect. In the second chapter, the ascent of sacrifice number 2, okay, that's the next chapter, he will deal with karma yoga and bhakti yoga. But here he is dealing with the jnana yoga. That's why he is going on stressing only the knowledge aspect. Okay, remember that. If you go to the chapter heading, you will see that it is the works of knowledge. Okay, ascent of sacrifice, but the works of knowledge. So each of the ascending planes bring their lights into the human activity by an increasing knowledge, and as in proportion as the ascent is made, the descent of power into the lower hemisphere dynamizes, becomes effective, dynamizes the ignorance by replacing it with the light of knowledge. It's like in a dirty glass of water, you start pouring water, you start pouring pure water. Slowly, slowly the dirt reduces, okay? Because it is now becoming more and more clear. Because it's exactly, that's why he's saying, descent of power into the lower hemisphere dynamizes the ignorance by replacing it with the light of knowledge. Then the distinction hitherto made earlier between the lower and the higher planes, between spirit and matter, between spiritual and mundane activity. He has used the word profane. We'll look at that carefully. But mundane activity. There are many people who say worldly life and spiritual life are different. He is pointing out here that they are not different. They are only grades. Even in a mundane life, spirituality can be brought in. Between sacred and profane stands cancelled. The division is cancelled. Okay. Someone asked Mother, where does spiritual life begin and where does worldly life end? So Mother says there is no division at all. Even in the physical world, you can do yoga. Okay. So, because even if 1% of yoga also is possible in the physical world, 2%, 3%. It's only a gradation, nothing much. And all action. Okay. stands cancelled, and all action, without exception, now puts on the form of a divinely willed movement and purpose. And all objects in the world are no more mere appearances, but created real forms of the divine will, with the reality lurking behind the form appearance. Behind the form is the divine presence, and you start seeing that. So the world is not unreal anymore, but there is a reality hiding behind the seeming unreality. Thus, the lower hemisphere is not rejected like before, but transformed and seen with a transmuted knowledge and sense. Finally, thus, all mental activity is heightened, widened, illumined, rising systematically to the higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind, and then into the overmind brilliance. Finally, it ends in the supramental gnosis, truth consciousness, which is the seat of supreme illumination and sovereignty, which is mastery, and lordship, which is Aishwaryam. So this is what he's saying. Okay? So, if you want, we can redo this para, because there are some words which you have to see. We can see that. Or if you think it's enough, we can go on to the next one also. Depends on all of you. Okay? 8:35, 8:36. I have crossed the time by 1 minute. Okay? The division between that's very important, and that's why we stress a lot on the higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind, overmind, which is level 2, level 1, level 2, level 3. I'm making it very, very, it's not as sharp as I'm saying, but they percolate one into the other, like rainbow colors. Okay? Each one is there in the other also, but still there is a difference also. Okay? Au revoir, everybody. Yasmin, Sumti, Harika, Shilpa.
Merci beaucoup. Pallavi.
Thank you. Bonjour, Rangada. Merci.
Bonjour.